Well, hello everyone. This is Srisha, and welcome to yet another interesting episode of SSVM EduTalk. Today, we are elated to have Dr. Ashwath, a well-renowned pediatrician in our Coimbatore city. His specialty and his extraordinary success with consultations yield a humongous demand from the parents of the Coimbatore community, I must say. In fact, I have personally witnessed this when I visited him for a consultation during my childhood. With more than 25 years of experience in this field, he has touched the lives of many children. Thank you very much, Doctor,
My pleasure.
For joining us at SSVM in the light of World Health Day today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So I'd like to begin by asking you, what drives you every day, and what's the most favorite part of your day?
I think it's like asking a fish, what is it about water that attracts you? So just like a fish would feel out of water, I just relate to pediatrics because it's a higher calling. It's not something I got into because of the monetary or the economic benefits that go with it. I'm really passionate about child health, and as long as I can make the attempt to reach out and touch a child's life in a positive manner, I think I'm powered by that. Oh. So it's more like solar power, it's pediatric power.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I think we know that reason behind your, why you wake up in the morning and why you're so passionate about going and meeting so many children every day and treating them. And I'd like to share that, learning is of an unbounded nature. It's not something that happens in a confined manner. And by that, I mean children, especially in their early childhood or early years, observe and learn not just in the domain of a classroom, but their learning is intertwined with various aspects that they are exposed to on a daily basis beyond their classroom, I must say. So most importantly, kids observe and try to imitate the adults that are closest to them in their circles. And it could be their teachers, it could be their parents, and it could be any family member for that matter. So I think 0 to 6 years is a crucial foundational stage, and all these aspects contribute to their brain development. You've had the opportunity to understand how parents and the children develop their relationship together and contribute positively to the overall development of the child. It will be wonderful to hear from you on what your view is on this.
You never spoke a true word. So the fact is, a small correction if I may. You said from 0 to 6 years. In the last 10 or 15 years have been periods of phenomenal advances in the way we understand the fetus develops. So we are very, very focused now on the first 1,000 years of life, and we go to 0 minus. So we actually start from the day of conception. We do not believe that pediatricians and community physicians are called into the picture after the birth of the delivery. That concept is slowly changing. Nowadays, we are talking about the first 1,000 days of life. That is 270 days inside, plus the first 2 years. So that's another 365 plus 365. That makes 1,000 days. So we believe there is a tremendous potential and phenomenal activity happening in the development of the fetus and the newborn. And the rest of the circuitry that is going to serve the child for the rest of his life, the foundation stones are being stayed out while the baby is still in the fetal phase. So for the first 12 weeks or the first 20 weeks, if you're able to say a solid foundation, that solid foundation is on the edifice on which the future building will stand. So if the foundation is weak, then the building is likely to be swayed by the high winds and the high water. So we believe that fetal nutrition, fetal development is important, if not more important than what happens after birth, because most of the things that would happen in the first 270 days have a lasting and fixed impact. Right. To give you a common example, if a mother enters pregnancy being iodine deficient. It's very, very common in the sub-Himalayan region of the country, the Terai and the Garhwal region, where people don't have access to seawater. Most of them are vegetarians, and they do not believe in iodine supplemented salt. So a good number of mothers enter pregnancy while they themselves are iodine deficient. And for the baby's brain development, in the first 12 weeks, the iodine that the mother takes is pretty much the only source of thyroxine for the baby's brain development. So if the mother does not get iodine in those first 12 weeks, the baby's brain gets damaged, and it stays damaged for the rest of the life.
Right.
So even if you were able to diagnose that the baby's thyroids are not in great shape on day 1 of life, even if you pump in all the medications that you can, it's still not going to completely reverse the injury that has taken place. So we are not just talking about medicine, we are talking about a holistic aspect of health where the mother enters pregnancy with a lot of joy, positivity, optimism, and when her nutritional, physical, mental, emotional well-being are all taken care of, that really provides a solid platform for the fetus to grow. So what happens in the first 2 years thereafter is building up upon what has happened in the first 270 days before the birth. And after that, physical, emotional, how stimulating the external environment is, getting the correct nutrients in the correct proportion, the correct age to meet the growing needs. We are very, very passionate about what's happening in the fetal brain because he really is the conductor of the orchestra. And we believe in a country or the so-called third world countries or the developing countries, it is micronutrients and the hidden hunger. So all the photographs that you see of the Somalian babies with the pot bellies and babies who are going up in a war ravage or a famine or a drought situation, that represents the tip of the iceberg. So for every one child who is clinically malnourished, there are probably 999 children who are having subclinical malnutrition. Why are we bothered about this? That subclinical malnutrition makes the entire community underproductive. Wow. So they will not be able to raise their level of standard of living to the next higher level for at least a generation. So it's losing an entire generation to, say, plague or COVID or war. So it is that important that we get the foundations right in the first 3 or 4 years of life. We are talking about nutritional, emotional, physical, one could add spiritual also.
And this includes their time in the fetus as well.
Absolutely.
And, so do you think that is a crucial period for brain development as well? And, is that the period, or is there another period where it is really important for the children to be exposed to certain kind of things for them to have that positive brain development? And I'm just wondering how that works.
It's a fantastic question. It's a very, very loaded question because I need to digress and try to make it as simple for the audience as possible. 50% of the entire growth of the brain is done by the time the child is born.
Right.
So you could imagine that 50% of the neural growth is complete when the baby is out. So all that you have is only 50% brain growth left behind for you. So in the first 50%, the fetus, it's basically you cannot address the fetus directly. It's only by empowering the woman, by taking good care of the pregnancy, by taking good care of the mother's nutrition and emotional and physical well-being that you actually influence the baby's growth. So tied to this fetal development to pediatrics, you cannot really take away mental health and maternal health from this. So mother has to feel that this child is a wanted child.
Right.
2, she has to have absolutely no physical or mental stress, and she should be provided all the love, care, affection and nutrition possible. So we have 2 periods. One is called a critical period, the other is called a sensitive period. A critical period is when an organ system is developing, and if that organ system is not supported optimally during that, that skill is lost forever. If I could give you an example, if a child is hard of hearing, and the child's hard of hearing is therefore not able to interact with their environment, the child is not speaking appropriately, but the parents say, this is what your grandparents did. Nobody in your family spoke until they were 2 years of age. So valuable time is lost in diagnosing that the baby has a hearing impairment. Now suddenly at 3 years when the child is ready for school, you find that this child is lagging behind other children. And then you take a pediatric or an otorhinolaryngologist consultation. And to your shock, you find that the child is hard of hearing. He is hearing impaired. He is deaf in layman's terms. At 3 years, You give the best possible inputs, you give the best possible hearing aid, you give the best possible care for the ears, that speech is lost forever. So that is the critical period. If you don't get your speech, if you don't get your vision, if that part of the brain doesn't get stimulated by that sense organ,
Right.
what is lost. You cannot recover it. The best of medical care can mitigate. It cannot reverse.
Right.
Sensitive period as opposed to critical period is a broader landscape. So basically what we're trying to say, if a mother has got iron deficiency, anemia, her baby is going to suffer some ill effect, but if you pick it up in time and you start pumping in the right side of nutrition at the right time, the damage would not be too lost because the sensitive period is a much more broader landscape. Some errors are permissible. Critical period is really critical. So in that time frame, injury can be irreversible, and therefore we need to keep your antennae all out and make sure that that injury doesn't occur.
Right.
So the potential is phenomenal, and therefore the responsibility that goes with that to prevent this from recurring is also phenomenal. But that gives you a window of opportunity which is very exciting to work on.
Exactly. So thank you so much for sharing that so beautifully, Doctor. It definitely has, enlightened us. And in those lines, I was wondering if there are certain types of food or physical activities that the parents should help their children focus on, especially in lines of this brain development. It could be right after the baby is born, and during those years until they're 6 years old. What type of food or physical activity that they should help support their children with?
Good. Again, a very, very nice question. I don't know who gave you these questions. I should congratulate you for asking real tough ones. So when we talk about nutrition, we have always been focusing, at least till the past 15 years, we have seen so much of drought, we have seen so much of war, deprivation, famine, poverty. So if you remember those aid for Africa, then you had AIDS, then you have diseases which ravage these entire continents and huge swathes of people. What we've always been concentrating is what we call the macronutrition. Right. That's the amount of proteins and the amount of calories in your diet. So even when we talk about nutrition or malnutrition, we have always been confined to talking about protein, calorie, malnutrition as though those were the only things that mattered. So much of input has come from UNESCO, WHO, World Food Organization, Food and Agriculture Organization, with agriculture practices becoming more efficient, with more equitable distribution of food. We are slowly seeing a paradigm shift away from these macronutrient deficiency to micronutrient deficiency. In fact, we have a separate name for it. This is called the hidden hunger. Hidden hunger because it's not seen. When you see somebody sitting in front of you whose weight and height are absolutely normal, we immediately come to the erroneous conclusion that he is healthy. Right. He's not. So these micronutrients are present in very small amounts. Some of them are very selective in where you can source them from. They are not universally distributed. But if they're not available for a child's growing system during a critical period, I gave you an example of iodine. I could also give you an example of iron. A simple nutrient called folic acid, which can prevent the spinal cord system from getting malformed. All these are very, very small things. So zinc, iodine, iron, chromium, cobalt, magnesium, choline. There are lots of micronutrients which don't get hero-heroine status. But definitely they are the unsung heroes because proteins and calories can do certain things. But the ultracellular level, at the molecular level, all these chota things go a big way in making your cellular machinery work seamlessly. Just like in any big organization, in a big hospital, is a doctor or probably a famous surgeon who hogs the limelight. But for that surgeon to achieve that success, there's a huge support system which is backing him up. Exactly. Without that, the doctor's surgery would come to naught. So these micronutrients and the hidden hunger concept is emerging in a big way because again, they are very, very easy to implement. It's very easy to supplement salt with iodine. It's very easy to supplement wheat with a bit of iron. Yeah. It's very easy to give massive doses of vitamin A to prevent blindness. And it's very easy to screen children for deafness and blindness. So the interventions that could have a lasting impact on the child health are actually very cost effective. We are not talking about multi-million-dollar initiatives. We are talking about very small community level practices that could change the whole face of health of our community in a short lifespan.
That's so true. I cannot agree more on that, doctor. So thank you for saying that. And I'm really quite curious about children's health in general in today's world, and compared to even a decade ago, probably. So, as a pediatrician, could you throw some light on this?
In the past 25 years, what I have personally seen in a corporate setup, I would not be the right person to speak from the community as a whole, but I get to see a certain segment of the community because of the nature of the practice that I have. But even there, I see certain very disturbing trends. In the sense, we have gone away from protein, calorie, malnutrition to malnutrition. Most children are getting nutrition from the malls.
Okay.
So that is malnutrition has become malnutrition now. So that is also something which we are not very particularly happy about, because gone are the days with the underweight. Now we are talking about children who are way too obese and way too overweight. And also what I am seeing is there seems to be a rat race programmed. You need to be the fastest rat. Every mother, every parent has got this untold desire that the child needs to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer to achieve. So you cannot make a fish climb a tree. You cannot compare a squirrel to a fish. You cannot compare an ant to a squirrel or an elephant. Each of us in God's infinite wisdom is programmed differently. The way I tell them is to look for the best in the child, to let each child fulfill his potential rather than to fulfill the parents' aspirations. So when you have a disparity between what is and what ought to be, it leads to a lot of stress on the family and on the child.
Wow.
So we have so many achievers. We can think of A.R. Rahman, we can think of Sachin Tendulkar, we can think of any number of people, Ilayaraja. These are not people who have been formally tutored in music. These are not people who have been formally tutored in cricket. It is just that they found the flair and they had a support system which could see the potential, the spark in them, and now they're all raging flames and the source of immense joy, pleasure and inspiration to so many aspiring children. So that is something we need to speak to parents about, rather than horses for courses. See what this horse is capable of, make sure he competes in the right race. You could do a sprint like Usain Bolt, or you could be a Kenyan steeplechase runner or marathon. The important thing is to win. It doesn't matter where you take part.
Exactly.
And it is not even important that you win. It's important that you take part in the right spirit and you prepare to lose. So life is a never-ending journey of learning. Earning is a subsidiary. It follows.
That is a beautiful message you shared along with it. Thank you, doctor. And, I think in today's world, there's more increased probably usage of technology, and with the easy access to gadgets and tech devices, I think the pattern of engaging with the children has changed. For instance, when I was a kid, I still remember how my mom used to interact with me so often, and she found so many different ways to actually engage me. And it could be even different kinds of physical activity or games. And I was always also fed when I was looking at something outside or admiring the nature and learning so many things from the outside world. But we see that pattern change these days, and kids, I believe, are being more engaged with the content that's being shared on tech devices. And I've seen kids literally eat their food while watching a cartoon or something on the iPad or tab, and it's so close to their eyes. And have you also noticed that? And is early exposure to gadgets a right thing or a wrong thing, especially under 3 years of age? And what would your advice for the parents be on this?
It's a very topical and timely problem. That's one of the other disturbing trends that COVID, the pandemic has really driven the nail in the coffin. Over the past couple of years, we've seen this dissociate because whether we believe in women empowerment and things like that or not, I don't think my mother's 8th standard just passed. She was pretty poor at maths, but she's extremely good at keeping the finances regular. She can offhand remember all the facts and figures of how much money we owe the grocer, the newspaper wala, and the kirakari, and the flower vendor. So she's learned all the basic maths that is. She may not be into the technical aspect, but the functional maths of keeping a family economically independent and viable, that much of maths she knows. And obviously in those days, it was perfectly acceptable for a woman to take the back seat and become a homemaker and be a care provider for the children and to help in the nature and nurture of children, and rather than not be driven by a career.
Right.
It is not for me to say that women should not pursue a career of their choice. Far from it. I'm all for women empowerment and for them to raise their true potential and position in society commensurate with their knowledge and their skills. That's not what I'm saying. The point I'm trying to make is, over the past 10 years, we are having shrinking in living spaces. So the nature, the ability for a parent to go and show a child a bullock cart going across the street or interact with nature the way you would, you are one of the lucky ones. So when you are cocooned in a 30-story building and you are on the 14th floor and you have social restrictions, mass restriction community going, how often do you actually see a mother being able to go out with the child and show her the world as it is? So this pandemic and the excessive need for productivity, double income, no kids, double income, single kid, DINK couples, DISC couples. So these are terms which did not exist 15 years ago. So the need to be economically upwardly mobile has virtually made it very difficult, at least in the city situation, for a single parent to sustain a child's growth and development. Education is expensive, healthcare is expensive, so we cannot blame them for seeking more economic independence. So what takes a big hit on this is the child's growth and development. As you very rightly said, the first 5 years is when all the neuronal circuitry is being laid. That's when children are being told their social skills are also developing, their language skills, the ability to interact.
Correct.
So the corollary of this is people are much more comfortable with gadgets and machines than they are with people. I would say confidently the number of children diagnosed with autism in the past 2 years is been nearly 3 times, 4 times more than what it was before the pandemic.
Wow,
are these true autisms? Probably not. What I do see is an autistic behavior where people are very happy to seek pleasure from machine than from men. Because father is sitting in one corner, he's wired to his system. Mother is another corner of the house wired to her system. So this child demands attention. So the only way you can keep this child active, engaged is to give him a device. So there are 3 devices. All you need is a high-speed internet and everybody is fixed and sorted out. The child gets emotionally extremely attached to that because the child genuinely believes that the laptop or the mobile is the third parent. Because obviously that is interacting much more with the child than even the parents.
Definitely.
So this is a very disturbing, but I don't really see a way out of this because education, entertainment have now become indispensable and they are indistinguishable. One is seamlessly merging into another. You look at your screen for education and thereafter for entertainment, you pretty much depend on the same screen. So there's eye strain, there's mental strain. We are seeing something new like internet game addiction, internet addiction. It's physically fatiguing, it's mentally fatiguing. Depending on the content of what you see, like there is nothing like good technology and bad technology. It's all the way you use it.
Exactly. I think I cannot agree more on that. And I think, like you said, definitely the pandemic has had an effect on how, the usage of technology has increased, and especially with working parents, they find a way to engage these kids with the tech devices. But is that the case even absent crisis, either previously before the pandemic or even once all this situation settles? Is there a way out where the parents could still find alternative ways to engage them instead of just handing them with a phone or an iPad?
I think the effort needs to come from the community as a whole, because if we give too much of a premium importance to education and marks, I do not see a way out of this rut because we are running in circles. Why are we always dependent on stuff because there is a pressure to learn more than your competitor, because that somehow seems to give you a extra edge, or it gives you a head start over the other child in terms of learning.
Exactly.
So we did not have this concept of coaching classes or tuitions or even special schools or grammars, as we used to call them. We were very happy to play, learn, and continue to learn on this side.
Correct.
Marks were important, but they were not as important as they are now. Nowadays, we are talking about children who are in class 6 being asked to make up their minds as to whether they would choose a course in fine arts, liberal arts, whether you would incline towards medicine. At 11 years, 12 years, the child is hardly entering puberty. So that's hardly the time for a child to really know whether he's going to make a good engineer, a good lawyer, or a good movie producer, or an actor,
Right.
or a doctor. So it's very difficult for us as a community to expect children to make those choices. And very often it's the parents who force these children into so-called forced labor, if you can use that very strong word, where children are asked to start doing extra classes, coaching classes, to make sure that the aspirations of the parents and the community, where the aspirations of the family are being tendered to rather than the individual's aspirations. So the community has to ease down a bit. We need to cool down and see it's perfectly fine. There is lots of name and fame and money to be made regardless of what field you are in. It just matters that you excel at whatever you do and do it with a lot of commitment and passion. It will shine through. It will make you shine apart from the rest of the crowd. That's one. Two, we need to go and reconnect that lost connect with nature. Unless you make the effort and reach out to nature, green spaces are shrinking. So you have to have holidays. You don't need to have expensive Bahamas. You don't need to have go on star cruises. So when you go on a holiday, one, your mind opens up to other possibilities. Two, it's an immensely educative experience. Third, you teach the children that there's a big wide world. Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. You are actually a small speck in a very large family. And it teaches children to also respect nature and make sure that they have enough of it left for their grandchildren. At the rate at which this is disappearing, all these things will only exist on net. Once upon a time, there used to be a lake called Singanallur Lake. Once upon a river, there flowed a river called Noyal.
Yeah.
It is how we are talking about Indus Valley civilization. In another 200 years, your great-grandchildren will be talking, there used to be a place called Coimbatore where a river called Noyal flowed. We don't want that to happen.
I cannot imagine that happening. And like you said, I think it's very important to connect with nature and really respect our Mother Earth and kind of give back to the earth and teach that to the children as well.
Absolutely.
And apart from that, I also agree with the travel exposure that you mentioned, because I think that is definitely a time where you can take a break from so many parents who are, swamped with work, and they're indulged in their career and they don't really get time to spend with their family, and that's one way to do so. And also, I think, like you mentioned, it's definitely a great educational experience when they learn from different cultures, and it's a very interesting way to also learn globalization in that matter as well, and connect with what we as a society are as well. So thank you for sharing that, Doctor. And as we're talking in these lines of the pandemic and how the past year has been so challenging for all of us in many different ways, something that we have witnessed and heard from the parents as well is that due to this lockdown and lesser physical activities for the children, I think a good amount of children have gained weight from, transformed from being fit to having gained weight. Yes. And should the parents have done something differently with the children's daily routine in terms of food, or what kind of food could have helped them mitigate this kind of an issue?
Again, very, very worrisome trend is most people have gone from fit to fat. So this is the point we are seeing. Where in the rural areas, malnutrition of a different nature exists. In the cities, especially in affluent cities, Coimbatore is representative of that. So we are seeing children having phenomenal increase in body weight, especially fat. So weight gain, growing up, and therefore putting on weight, of which that's a part, is pretty much part of pediatrics. But the trend of weight gain, the disproportionality of the weight gain is quite striking.
Right.
Two, because most of the work is now getting done sedentary. Most children are attending classes online. They are not allowed to go down and play. And it's neurobiology, it's actually behavioral, that when you're sitting idle, you tend to snack more. And again, a very disturbing thing is while we consciously keep telling people to choose healthier snacks, healthier alternatives, and have more fruits and veggies and lots of cereals and grams and pulses on your plate. We want 50% of entire pediatric nutrition to come from grams, cereals, vegetables, fruits, and have very limited amounts of trans fats and ready-to-use foods. You look at the economics of it. It's peak summer. A tender coconut water, the cheapest quality you will get costs about 20-25 rupees.
Right.
For 25 rupees, I can get 3 packets of so-called milk biscuits, where there is very, very influential advertising, which seems to suggest to a poor parent that if you give this child a packet of biscuits, it somehow gives you the goodness of 2 glasses of milk because it shows exactly 2 glasses of milk being poured into that biscuit packet. So the mother who cannot afford milk at 50 rupees per liter is quite content to shell out 7 rupees on a packet of biscuits, thinking that provides wholesome nutrition.
Okay.
So how many of us actually seek out things like groundnut or jaggery cakes? Those are all lost arts. Now ready-to-use food, intense gratification, immediately sensory gratification, everything is now boiling down to time.
Exactly.
We need immediate, what shall we say, gratification. We need immediate pleasure. We are not willing to wait. So anything that is cumbersome to make, anything that's cumbersome to prepare is going to be shelved for the time being, because when you want instant results, all you need to is peel open a packet of goodness and munch. And they are so seductively priced, packaged and promoted by so many superstars on the TV. You can look at your period, all you need to open up is any of the kids channel. Virtually every second or third advertisement is either for learning apps or how to be a master programmer or how eating a particular band of jam is going to make you play like Tendulkar, or how drinking a beverage will make you get Virat Kohli out. So that's not the truth, but that's the power of advertisement. You create a need and you fulfill a need, and you're basically speaking to the psyche of a parent who thinks all this is good nutrition because XYZ says so.
Oh, that's so very true, I think. And, something that struck my mind while you were mentioning this is that I think in the Western world and also in India, we see quite a number of millennials and the younger generation kind of converting themselves to veganism, and which is they don't even have dairy products, but they have alternatives of them. And do you think that is a healthier option for the kids as well, or have you seen cases where children also convert?
That's a pretty loaded question, because veganism to a certain segment of society is about a religious choice. So it's like what is your stand on abortion? It's a very sensitive topic because at one point you give the woman the right to choose what is best for her and the unborn baby. On the other side, you have the pro-life group saying all life is sacred. You have no right to take away what God has given you. So that's a very tricky ground and very slippery slope that we would be walking on. From the pediatric point of view, God in all in His infinite mercy has never packaged a particular nutrient in any particular source. So He's been very general and very equitable. He's the biggest communist I can think of. So He's made sure that everything is available everywhere.
Right.
So is it possible for you to get optimal nutrition being a vegan? It is possible, but then you have to be very, very choosy. There are things like vitamin B12, which are almost exclusively found only in non-vegetarian sources. For medical purposes, milk is considered a non-vegetarian because it comes from it's a biological end product of another species.
Great.
So if you are going to talk about veganism, then the onus is on you to make sure that good quality proteins, iodine, and long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, and B12, which are all very vital for nutrition in general and very specifically for pediatric nutrition and very specifically for pediatric brain nutrition.
Exactly.
All these things are found in inordinately simpler, easier to assimilate form in non-vegetarian foods. That includes milk as compared to vegetarian sources. So a vegan mother has a task cut out. She has to be extremely careful about what she chooses to give to her child because the potential for hidden hunger, malnutrition is very high.
Oh, okay.
Non-vegetarian iron is better absorbed. Non-vegetarian sources of B12 are far cheaper, far more abundant than vegetarian sources. So is it impossible? It's not impossible. It's far easier to go easy and have a more diverse diet. But however, for personal or religious reasons, if you choose veganism as a healthier alternative, by all means do so. But you need to be very careful about how your calories and carbs and the proteins and especially the trace elements come from.
That's very true. I think we've definitely learned from that, and parents or millennials who have converted themselves to having a vegan diet, I think will definitely benefit out of this. So, doctor, as we were talking about food and its importance and how the behavior and pattern should change, we've had experience dealing with parents and hearing from the parents as well on how they're influencing their interests or choices on particular food for the children. For example, if a parent is not interested in having a particular vegetable or a certain type of food that's spicy or anything like that, I think the child is automatically influenced by that, and their choices are also kind of changing because of that. And what would you suggest, and what do you think would be the great way to deal with such influences in children, and how should they take their own choices in terms of what food they would like to have?
It's a very interesting question because it has long-lasting impact on the child's future choices of nutrition. Now, it's correct for a family to have a set religious belief. They may believe in, as we discussed, vegetarianism, or to take it to the awful extreme, veganism. So all these are choices that we consciously make. Having said that, we as pediatricians are very particular that children be given as many options, culinarily speaking, to explore their options. So we have proteins, calories, fats, vitamins and minerals as the 5 fingers of a hand. These are the 5 aspects of nutrition. So your carbs could come from multiple sources, your proteins could come from multiple sources, so also fat, vitamins and minerals. So once a child is curious about exploring the world, he will also start exploring things with all the sense organs. So he's listening to music, he's listening to noise, he's listening to soft sounds, hard sounds, he's seeing pleasant, unpleasant things. Similarly, the child's taste system is also going to develop at a very rapid pace. So if parental choices are thrust upon the child and the child is not allowed to explore a certain part of his nutritional experience, that is lost forever. After a while, it is very, very common for a child to become extremely fastidious about what he would like to see on his plate. And very often, the parents are also guilty of having thrust their own choice subconsciously on the child. My child does not like anything which is red in color. My child will not take anything that's white on color. Anything that is gooey or icky, my child will not take. So please desist from giving. Now these are gooey, icky, white, red, pink, salt, sour, acidity. All these things are learnt experiences. So as long as the child is allowed to make up his mind or her mind as to what suits its best, I really think parents need to take the back seat and make sure that the food is wholesome.
Exactly.
Right. Is it good to have salt? Absolutely yes. You need to have a basic amount of salt in your diet. We are not asking you to go overboard on salt, but definitely salt needs to come from food as added salt. It need not be salty, but definitely salt is necessary. Are sugars needed? Yes. If they are complex sugars, well and good. We are not talking about promotion of the refined sugar as we understand it. Try to give as many varieties and choices as possible so that the child will learn on the go and make his own choices. If the child is fed a particular food and is consistently refusing a food because of the color or consistency or because it does things to the child. For example, we have conditions where the child's intestines cannot produce an enzyme called lactase. So if this child is fed milk, immediately the child has bloating, the child starts throwing up, the child starts having abdominal cramps, and the child has diarrhea. So this is a medical condition where a doctor would tell you, please desist from giving milk to this child because this child cannot tolerate milk.
Exactly.
But telling a child not to take milk because it's white in color or because I believe milk is non-vegetarian is restricting the child's nutrition. I don't think that's the right way forward. Going into life, if the child chooses not to have milk for purely personal or religious or some other reason, that's a child's choice. We as parents need to promote that innate curiosity in the child to explore his world.
Exactly.
Exploring different tastes, exploring different textures, exploring different subtleties and flavors are all very much part. I think we are blessed to be in India, especially South India, where so many nuances are available in cooking.
Exactly.
No two korumbas are the same, no two rasams are the same, no two chutneys are the same. We constantly innovate and keep doing one better to make sure that this interest is kept alive. So I think it will be a tragedy if the child is not allowed to explore his world.
Very true. I cannot, agree more on that. And definitely, it is so crucial and important for the parents to allow that experience to happen. And I was also wondering what age is, particularly good for them to expose to either salt or sugar, like you mentioned, because we see a lot of parents, even under 1 years old, they kind of restrict them from, having salt or any kind of other food restrictions. So what do you think is the right age for that?
So the nutritional advice that we give to our parents is pretty much founded on our Pediatric Association recommendations, which are broadly based on the American Academy of Pediatrics Nutrition and heavily influenced by the WHO's nutrition, because what's good for the US of A is not necessarily what's going to work out in Coimbatore or Singanallur. So we need to blend the best of the Western science with the local religious, political, social, economic practices and see what is applicable to most parents. Correct. So what we do say is mother breastfeed the child for 2 years at least and upwards if possible. For the first 6 months of life, exclusive breastfeeding except for multivitamins which may be advised by the pediatrician or the nutritionist. And after 6 months, we are really going to go hard after the child in terms of offering different sources of carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins and minerals. We also tell them to go easy on cow's milk till they are 1 year of age because of the allergenic potential. And we definitely do not advise added salt to the diet till the age of 1 year.
Okay.
And refined sugar at all times is not a strict no-no, but we definitely want them to have restrictions in the amount of sugar and salt they take. Not to exclude, to include, but what is acceptable for that society and that family. But no to cow's milk for the first 1 year, breastfeeding for 2 years, salt and sugar in the natural form.
Yes.
So if sugar comes in the form of fruits or jaggery or nata chakra, that's obviously the preferred form of sugar as compared to the refined aska sugar.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That was very helpful. So, Doctor, we'd like to know, when is an advisable, period or time for a child to learn self-eating, or the parents to expose them to learn to eat by themselves? And also, is it important for these children to actually have, 3 meals per day or more, just as much as we eat? And what's the advisable quantity of eating for them?
That's a very tricky question. I think most parents will hate me forever for saying these things. But as from the pediatric point of view, from the motor skills that the child is capable of, we have this new concept emerging called finger food. Finger food is basically when the child is 8 to 9 months old, the child can actually start grabbing objects with the pincer grasp. So he actually uses this like a crab would use its claws, and we encourage parents to give them soft, assimilable, easily digestible substances which are made in the form of small balls or squares, cut into different shapes, different colors to make it more aesthetic, and encourage the child to pick and start feeding himself. A, it allows the child to develop his motor skills. 2, his skills are being put to good use. Third, it makes the child very self-confident, then he can actually feed himself. Fourth, you're pandering to his sense of ego and saying you're a boss, you have started feeding yourself, you don't need a nanny to run after you. Fifth, most important is when the child says my tummy is full or I have had my fill, he stops eating. So very often, especially from a poor economic background, if a mother has made XYZ amounts of food, she cannot afford to see that food going waste. So she says, I've taken so much of effort to prepare this and put this on your plate. You're not going anywhere without finishing the last morsel. Sometimes she keeps shoving it till the child can take no more and everything comes outside, which is a tragic waste of material. 2, it forces the child into some sort of psychological subjugation. It's a form of slavery, saying, I am going to feed you. I've already made up my mind what your breakfast is, what your lunch is. So the choice is taken away from the child. So the feeding has become a very stressful experience. A meal is something you actually look forward to. It's a very enjoyable part of your life, the ability to enjoy a meal. So that should not become an exercise in slavery or a forced phenomenon. So the child should be allowed to feed himself from the age of 8 and 9 months upwards. And from the nutritionists, we have certain set amount of proteins. Very broadly speaking, it's 100 calories per kilo for the first 1 year of life. A 1-year-old child would eat roughly around 1000 calories. And it's 2 to 3 grams of proteins per kilo per day. So if we believe that a 1-year-old child weighs 9 kilos, he needs 20 grams of proteins. Now, where those 20 grams of protein is going to come from is going to vary from family to family. So if I'm a vegetarian, I'd probably be looking at pulses, legumes for my choice, for dals for my choice of protein. If I'm into a mixed diet, probably I'll be looking at eggs and meat products and a bit of milk and cheese and paneer and stuff like that to give me my proteins. So what is important is not to lose the bigger picture. We cannot afford to become very particular about the timing of the meals, the quantity of the meals, rather than trying to say, is this child getting his adequate calories and proteins to sustain health and promote growth and development?
Exactly.
If that is achieved, what we do suggest is having small frequent meals rather than forcing the child into a breakfast, lunch, tiffin, dinner system. So that is very easy for the child to be assimilated into a school curriculum, because a school starts typically at around 8 or 9. So it's important for the child to have a breakfast and get into school.
Right.
And then the mothers would pack a dabba which they think is optimal, because many mothers have given up the struggle to feed the child. They are thinking that the fear factor in the school and the peer pressure when they see the other children gobbling up, so this child will also be forced to take, or that IMA or the class teacher would be able to force and get food down the baby's throat, which she mother herself cannot.
Exactly.
So it is basically, what shall we say, delegation of responsibility, a very unpleasant responsibility, and making sure that the child gets one proper meal, because a child back home is definitely not going to listen to the mother.
Yeah.
So many parents think that it's the teacher's job and the school's job to shove that extra nutrition down the throat, and then you come home after school hours to a snack and then probably retire to bed after taking a conventional meal. So this sort of two big foods and two small foods is what most traditional South Indian households believe in. But if you go to the West, they are very heavy on breakfast. Their lunches are more of a break from work. It's a working lunch. It's going to be a bagel or a sandwich or a snack. It's more time to take off your work, relax, hang out with your friends, get recharged for the afternoon session. And dinner is more of a social exercise.
Definitely.
So I think there are goods and bads in both the things. I don't think we have the perfect way of feeding a child. And having said that, all children don't follow this set routine. So these routines are nice for us to make the child school friendly, prepare him for school. But nutritionally speaking, it doesn't really matter where your calories and proteins come from, whether they are fractionated, whether you're lunch heavy or whether you're dinner heavy or whether you're breakfast heavy. What matters is getting those 5 principles of food, the carbs, the proteins, the fats and the vitamins and the minerals into at the child, which is age and sex and development appropriate. That's more important than how the meal is given. What is given, how it's given, how much is given, how it's fractionated. I think there's a lot of scope for experimentation, and there is really no fixed way of this is the right way, my way is the right way.
Exactly. I think that's amazing, and I'm sure the parents who are watching this today will be taken aback by the information that you've shared. And I think it's really important to consider this, especially for an overall development of the child, and to have that positive relationship with food as well, and not be aversive towards the food they are exposed to. So thank you for sharing that, doctor. And one other question that I had is, we kind of experience certain situations where, children come on with their diapers even in their kindergartens. And, we feel that it's really important for the parents to potty train these kids early on. So what do you suggest, and what would your advice be for the parents, on making the children wear diapers? Is that a good thing? And what's the right age for them to not be wearing them?
So there are multiple issues. A very interesting question, because we were not potty trained, we were party trained. So more often than that, the chief potty trainer was the party. The party used to keep us upside down, and very often once a week, and it was the tradition many households to be given castor oil and make sure that your gut remains clean. Even the environment goes for a 6 in the process. So that party's ability to make you squat and evacuate your bowel contents very effectively and in a fixed manner is something we have lost somewhere down the line. We are not saying that we should have, just like we said, in meals you could have a lot more freedom. You can also respond to the calls of nature in a very relaxed atmosphere. See, the potty training is typically between the ages of 1 to 3 years. By the time the child has started going to preschool, or definitely by school, we expect more children to be dry by day, indicate bowel needs, indicate the need to evacuate bladder or bowel contents. That is training. But sometimes what happens is, on one hand, you have extremely coercive parents who are very, very ickish and very, very rigid about thou shalt not pass your stools or urine except during designated hours. That sort of regimentation is going to keep the baby feeling very guilty in case he feels the urge. So the baby starts voluntarily holding back because he thinks he's going to be censured or scolded for wetting his pants. So that sort of avoidance behavior is trained. That is what we call the coercive toilet training. Whereas the other extreme is what we say, the diaper training, where the diapers give you the freedom to wet your diapers or soil your diapers without any form of listening to that inner urge to evacuate. So we are not saying this is good or that is good. The truth is in between. Like most often, the truth is out there, and it's the middle path which is the safest. Between the age of 1 and 3 years, we need to teach the children to respond to the calls of nature without postponing, provided the environment is appropriate for that. It should become a painless and guilt-free experience. That guilt-free experience is very important, because if you are very coercive about toilet training and you start putting a lot of pressure on the child to do his potty training in a fixed pattern, it produces a lot of expectations in the child, and the child feels very bad and guilty in case things don't go according to plan. So that is to be. And regarding diapers, diapers are the new gods. Gods don't die, diapers don't die either. So it's a scar on the environment to see these plastic things hanging around, and
Very
diapers are a big, big nuisance value. Like e-waste, we generate so much of biological waste. These are non-degradable most often, and they are going to be a long time around on planet Earth. So we need to go back to cloth diapers, or still better, not use diapers at all.
Exactly.
We have had generations of children growing up in India where we have never heard this word diaper, except when you see advertisements with babies running around in these clothes. So to me, that is definitely not good for the baby's sense of psychological well-being. Two, it's bad news for the environment.
Definitely.
So death to all diapers.
I very much agree with what you said, and being a sustainable sustainability enthusiast, and having read about how much these, heaps of diapers actually impact our earth, and it takes almost, I think, close to 100 years for them to be completely depleted. And so it's very, very important, apart from actually helping train our children and giving them that right training and comfort, it is also important to think about our planet and, make sure that we are...
You never spoke a true word.
Yes, exactly. Is there a rise in type 1 diabetes or, that is juvenile diabetes in the recent years? And what age group of children are usually affected by this? And how can parents help in preventing this for their children?
And a very important question. See, we need to learn a lot of from what's happening in the West. So you are provided with an immune system. So the immune system is having a tiger at your house. If you feed the tiger its daily source of meat and make sure that the tiger is taken good care of, the tiger is going to leave you alone. If on the other hand, you don't feed the tiger, you keep giving it bread and biscuit, it's going to come after you. So the immune system is like a hungry and perpetually angry, irritable tiger. So if the immune system in the olden days was constantly being challenged by tuberculosis, by plague, by worms, by germs, and we had lots of infectious diseases that was keeping the immune system occupied. With better health care, with more sanitation, with more hygiene, with lots of vaccines, what has happened is you've taken away many infectious loads off the plate. Now you have an overactive immune system which is sitting idle. All that it has to do is respond to your numerous jabs that you keep giving. Having done that, he's saying, what will I do now? If I don't have anything else to eat, let me start eating the host. So we are seeing alarming increase in the amount of inflammatory and autoimmune disorders. So that is why you have an increase in obesity, who for a pediatrician is an inflammatory disease. It is not just excess body fat. Mark my words, obesity is an inflammation as much as arthritis is. Right. So we are seeing an increase in the amounts of immune dysregulation, an immune system which is showing its geth, if you want to use that word. So arthritis, obesity, autoimmune disorders, of which type 1 diabetes is a prototype. So it's a hungry, angry, irritable immune system which has nothing else to do, so it starts attacking the host. In the last 15 to 20 years, especially in the West, you have seen the number of rates of deaths from pneumonia, diarrheal diseases, measles, tuberculosis, brain fever coming down. And you have seen an increase in the risk of asthma, arthritis, SLE, behavioral issues, suicides, depressions, substance abuse. So are children healthier today than they were 20 years ago? They are fighting different battles. They are fighting different demons. So type 1 diabetes, to answer your question very specifically, is on the rise. There's no doubt about it. What we believe diabetes is an immune system gone awry. So you have an immune system which, instead of targeting its energy outside, has started attacking the child's own pancreas, very specifically the beta cells which produce insulin in the pancreas, leading to a progressive decline in the amount of beta cells. So when about 80% of your beta cells are destroyed, you get what is clinically overt diabetes mellitus. And we believe that the immune system and some unknown environmental agent, along with some rising levels of arsenic in the groundwater, the dietary choices that we make, and the overall robustness of the immune system are all playing their role. The genes have not changed in the past 40 years. We are having the same genes generator of generation. So it's not just the genetics. What has changed is the environment, for the worse in many ways. So genuinely type 1 diabetes, not just diabetes, asthma, obesity, arthritis, you name it, all the inflammatory disorders are on the rise.
Oh, wow. That's incredible, doctor. We've definitely learned from that information. And we would like to know if there is an impact on children's mental health, especially in the homes where, both the mom and dad are working. When both the parents are working, what's the impact on mental health for children?
I think we had a small peep into this world a couple of minutes ago. So children need your time. Children need your presence. Children need your physical presence. Children need your emotional inputs. Language and social interaction are so very important in today's world. So to me, when a parent comes and says, no parent to this date in the past 25 years has ever asked me to produce my MBBS certificate or show my pediatrics mark list. It's in trust. It's in faith. So when the child comes, it doesn't matter whether the mother's IQ is 150 Mensa grade IQ or she's a very, very averagely educated mother. What matters to the child is how much of the mother is available to her, how much time the mother is able to spare for the child's growth and development. By growth and development, I do not mean physical growth and development. We are talking about emotional, social, and psychological well health. That is going to be determined a large part by how the child models.
Exactly.
So the best role models for any child's overall well-being are the parents. So if the parents are seen to be are seen to be more dedicated to their careers and economic independence and upwardliness, the children is going to go up with a very warped sense of what really matters. So the child thinks that you need to own 2 cars. It's very important for you to own your house. It's very important for you to have a roof over your head that you call your own. You need to have a space that you can call your own. And this is all that matters. And what is worse, we are also showing them that it does not matter how many lives are trampled on the way, how many lives are indirectly affected in a wrong sense in your path to, in your pursuit of happiness. So this child is getting the wrong value system embedded to its own. So when that child becomes a parent, that child also thinks it's easy for me, it's very important for me to pursue my career rather than spend time with the child, because learning will anyway come from the app. The child's school is meant to educate the child. Education is not just about ABC and reading, writing, and arithmetic. There is a lot more. As you very rightly said, children model themselves after their parents. So we are teaching their children physically, verbally, non-physically, non-verbally. They see you. Are you a stickler for time? Is there a lot of respect being given to elders? When you talk of a third person who's not present, what language is used? What political comments do you throw about? What language is used? How do you react to what is happening in the paper? Everything is being absorbed like a sponge by this baby. So whether he understands or not, he's going to be influenced ever so subtly by our presence. So if you're going to spend less time with the children, if you're available only as a taskmaster and not as a loving parent, as a person who's made mistakes, I'm very happy to tell my children how many mistakes, how many times I've goofed up. Because it helps them to see their parent as one of them. So you're not the perfectionist. Today I may be a doctor. I may have so many people waiting to see me. I may be seen as a bigwig. But I was not like this 25 years ago. I was also an also-ran. I just pursued my dream. I just chased my dream with single-minded devotion, had an excellent wife and a very good supporting parent system, and of course the love and affection of the community. So they also need to know that having ambition and aspirations is not enough. It's your interactivity. We are not talking about intelligence quotient. We are talking about emotional quotient. EQ is going to play a role, not IQ.
Definitely.
So how learned you are doesn't matter. Are you able to empathize? Are you able to reach over and hug a child and say, you're special to me? That's what distinguishes a good doctor from an average doctor.
That's definitely a powerful message you shared, and I think it'll be etched in all of our minds for sure. And the fact that you admit, your own mistakes in parenting to your children, and I think that's going to be definitely a learning lesson for them to also, carry forward when in the future when they are parents as well. So nobody has to be a perfectionist, and taking those imperfections and embracing and admitting that these are happening is very, very important. Thank you for that, Doctor. And finally, moving on to our last question, I think we would like to know one thing you would like to share with the parents, the teachers, and the children too, something that they would always have to remember and practice in their lives.
So I have not reached the stage of my career or age that I can give advice. Advising is the easiest thing to do, and following the advice is the most difficult thing to do, is what I've been told. I understand the full import of that. But what I would say is, again and again, trust in your child, trust in life. Life is way, way too big for us to have these imaginary warps running around us. I think I would be permitted to use a Tamil saying of a very famous novelist, Shiva Shankari. She used to write a series of articles entitled Siru Nool Kanda Nammai Siraipaduthuvathu. So we have created an imaginary ball, and you've wrapped yourself and you are covering yourself in bandages and saying, I'm not free to move. So what we want is unfettered, unconditional love and affection, and the basic platform needs to be set for children to explore their world, learn from every source. Every day I go, I learn from my parents, I learn from my patients, I learn from my housekeeping staff, I learn from my postgraduates. So learning is an ever joyous process as long as you find zest and meaning and joy in and curiosity in what life has to offer. I don't think we have done our job as parents if ever we sort of stifle that child's innate curiosity to explore and to question everything. Encourage your children to question everything. Nothing is sacred. Whatever we hold to be sacrosanct today was all questioned in the past, and they will be questioned in the future. Encourage them to approach the world with an open mind and ask questions of themselves and of the world, and
Wonderful.
be informed.
Wonderful. You've shared that so beautifully, Doctor.
Let me take the opportunity to thank the SSVM family for making this meeting possible. And I really appreciated those questions, because none of these questions, the audience may or may not know that this is not being choreographed. See, these are all spontaneous questions and very spontaneous answers. I think the audience would be emancipated enough to understand that whatever has come is just coming out of the heart.
Yes.
So these are not pre-prepared questions and answers. So whatever holds good today, probably another 15, 20 years, this video will still have relevance, I believe.
Definitely.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity and having this platform and hosting me.
Thank you very much for joining us in this conversation today. And I very much appreciate you for taking the time out of your hectic schedule, especially in the wee hours of the morning. I can imagine how packed your schedule is. And we thoroughly enjoyed listening to you and your insightful answers, as well as experiences that are very much going to be helpful for the parent community. And thank you for watching us. And with that, we are signing off. And catch me with another interesting guest in the next episode.